20th. Then you see Alaska, Anchorage, and Southern Connecticut just below them. And that has to do with the fact that, they're looking at the GEC championships and the USAG. Look at Gigi Mastalone, her first 2 career meets on the bars. Pretty darn good.
There's obviously a huge step up between high school gymnastics and the travel circuit and now at the collegiate level, but she has not missed a beat. You see that 9.8 score, outstanding in the tri-meet that she had last weekend, and she is certainly one to watch this afternoon.
Getting better each week. She was 9.7 in her debut, and then, as Mason just said, a 9.8 in the second one out. So we'll have some collegiate gymnastics on the other side of this timeout. The Bears playing host to the Seawolves and the Owls. It's next here on Alaska, Anchorage, and that puts Southern Connecticut at the beam, and nobody on the floor as of yet. Well, that'll sort of rotate through with only the 3 teams here. And you are looking down at the campus here, the Pizzatola. There's Brown's first rotation, and you'll see they'll start with Asta Farrell leading up to Julia Bedell, who, again, Mason, had such a great weekend a weekend ago.
Yeah, that's a strength for this Brown team, defending Ivy League champs. Julia Bedell, of course, that 9.85 a week ago. She is certainly one to watch if she's going to continue to really lead this team in that event. Does a Yurchenko layout full, which is certainly something to watch. You see Alaska Anchorage there starting on bars, and that was where they really performed at an extremely high level. Mentioned second highest bars score in a road meet in program history a week ago. They've been here on the East Coast for the last couple of weeks. Then they'll head back to Alaska after this.
And for Southern Connecticut, the start on the beam. See the scores a little bit more all over the place, I guess you would say. You see a couple of us athletes at that 9.7, but Angel Lee, I'm sure, looking to improve on that 9.175 as she was deducted for a fall last time out.
Well, if you're going to be the anchor on any of these apparatus, you're expected to be the one that performs, and that 9.1 obviously a blemish on that scorecard, but she's there for a reason, and that means she's going to be doing high difficulty routines and potentially high scoring routines as well.
That was a practice run for the record, as now we will get underway here in the first rotation. For Southern Connecticut on the beam, that's Libby Allen. Top right corner of your screen, you'll see the vault for the Bears. Asta Farrell will vault first. They're still warming up and still warming on the, taking the final warm-ups on the bars are the Seawolves.
Farrell with the lowest difficulty, just a Yurchenko layout. I say just, not like any of us could do it, but compared to what her teammates behind her are going to be doing, adding stuff to that original Yurchenko for the higher scores.
There's head coach Brittany Harris, a successful first season a year ago for the former Oregon State gymnast. She spent a year at Centenary before heading here to Brown. This is her second season. Last year, Brown winning the Ivy. It's called the Ivy Classic because there are only the 4 schools in the Ivy League that compete in women's gymnastics: Brown, Cornell, Penn, and Yale. And the Bears were the number 2 seed going into the GEC championships and ended up finishing in 4th. Did have a couple of NCAA qualifiers. There's head coach Byron Knox. He's in his 3rd season at Southern Connecticut. Built a real power at Bridgeport before returning to his alma mater a couple of years ago.
And that's a Bridgeport team that you always see a few times throughout the year. In fact, that's the only dual meet that will be hosted here after next weekend. You have Rumble and Tumble a week from now, and then after 8 home meets a year ago, just 3 here in 2024.
And for Alaska Anchorage, there's their head coach, Marie-Sophie Bogash, in her 3rd season for the Seawolf alumna. She graduated there in 2016. And, Brown team that has struggled against the Seawolves in the past. Haven't gotten a win against them since I think it was 2003. And then Brown's former head coach, Sarah Carver-Mill, now an assistant coach down at Auburn, was herself a Seawolf, class of 97.
And there's such a tight-knit community. Not a coincidence that Alaska Anchorage is here. Sophia Heiderali, now Brown first-year assistant coach, former Seawolf herself, class of 2020. So some overlap there between Alaska Anchorage's current head coach and Brown's current assistant. You see Coach Heiderali there, and you mentioned Centenary. That's where Alaska goes next. So everyone knows everyone in the gymnastics circuit, from the collegiate all the way down, and obviously all the way up to the premier events, the national championships, and the Olympic Games to come from Paris this summer.
Yeah, the Seawolves, boy, they are road warriors. They had UC Davis at home. They're here in New England. A couple weeks from now, they'll head to Shreveport, take on Centenary. Then it's off to Illinois to take on Illinois State and Northern Illinois before back to California for both duels against UC Davis and Sacramento State, and then the Mountain Pacific Sports Federation Championships on March 23rd.
If you're going to compete in any sport at Alaska Anchorage or Alaska Fairbanks, you're going to have to be prepared for long road trips. Can't really bus. No long bus trips.
There
really.
are no bus trips.
So certainly those unsung heroes, the individuals that plan the budgeting and all those trips that don't get a lot of respect, they do there.
So now we will get underway. Final words of counsel from the respective coaching staffs before this first rotation. Brown lineup on the vault, which will move pretty quickly, is Asta Farrell, Emily Ford, Lauren Kramer, Angela Zing, Sophia Dewar, and Julia Bedell. Jessica Lynn will vault as an exhibitionist. Her score will not count. Emily Ford, of note, you see her in the number 2 spot there. The first year is going to be in the all-around today. She will compete. You'll hear that name in all 4 events. Will Ford, the first year out of nearby Barrington, Rhode Island.
Had a 37.75 last week in the all-around at Oregon State. 9.6 on her vault, which is a Yurchenko back full. We'll obviously follow her around and keep track of all the scores as they come in. Our hard-working ESPN Plus crew will try and bounce around and give you all the camera angles as you see Asta Farrell readying herself. And again, it's a Yurchenko to start.
Up she goes. Little back step. You see Farrell with that knee brace, just her competing. You can see she's a little disappointed with the mark there, but just her competing. I remember talking to Coach Harris about her last year. She's a student athlete who had to battle back from some injury. As you get a look at the, again, beam in the bottom right corner of your screen with Ava Kelly. Oh, I'm sorry, of Southern Connecticut. It's Libby Allen. I apologize.
It's Montana Fairbairn for Alaska Anchorage. That will lead off when they eventually get to the vault. But for bars, it's Haley Perkins.
Haley Perkins will pick up some speed. And a pretty clean dismount for Perkins. Her teammates are happy with it.
This is an interesting Seawolf roster, obviously. Alaska, you called it the final frontier, but they draw from Guatemala, California, plenty of Canadians, a lot of Australians, interestingly enough, and then from as far as Hawaii in terms of the Pacific. So quite a recruiting trail that head coach Bogash has to blaze, as you see Southern Connecticut celebrating a strong beam start. Like that's
Emily Ford.
Yep.
Ford, the Yurchenko tuck full. Her first home competition as a brown bear for Ford. Again with the 9.6 last weekend. Here she goes. That's a pretty solid vault.
Start.
Yeah, very good start. And
worth noting, she is the only all-arounder that is rostered between these three schools today. So
that's a very clean landing, too, for Ford.
Early part of the season, that's just what you're trying to lay down, these solid starts. You start on an apparatus you're comfortable in if you're the Brown Bears, and that always gives you confidence as you head around the rest of the four.
We will do our best to keep you apprised of the running scores and the individual events. Admittedly, from our perch, sometimes they don't turn those scorecards around in such a way as they're completely viewable to Mason and I.
We'll keep you updated certainly after each rotation, as that was Emily Kahl second up on the beam for the Owls. And as you said, Mike, quickly moving through, and now it's Lauren Kramer's turn on vaults. Kramer, same vaults as Ford, that Yurchenko layout full. Scored 9.775 last time out. Love to duplicate that, or even better it toward that 9.8. As second up for Alaska Anchorage on the bars, Jessica Johnson.
You get a look at the vault in the top right corner for Lauren Kramer, Brown's senior. One of a couple of seniors on the roster. As we turn back over to Emily Kahl.
Nice and smooth on that back handspring. Getting ready for her dismount in just a moment. We'll go back one more time and then proceed for her dismount.
And she couldn't. You saw her trying to hold it there for that last little pull, and her heel just came a little bit off the bar. You're only dealing with a couple of inches.
And then you're battling gravity, which is a gymnast's ultimate nemesis. Here comes that dismount.
Johnson able to bail it out, as here's another look at Kramer's vault. Pretty strong.
And in terms of her trajectory, it was right down the center of the mat, just that one step back with that left foot, but it's going to be 10th or so.
There's Angela Zing of the Bears. Zing had that 9.85 last weekend, or 9.85 was her career high last season, I should say. And it's a pretty good vault. Let's see, yes. A full layout for Zing, and I see a couple of nines going on to her score sheet already. And it's just a matter of whether those that second one, you kind of anticipate the first 9. You get to that 9.87, 9.9 mark.
Well, she was 9.65 a week ago at Oregon State. You'd think that's closer to a 9.7, but we'll see.
On the bars for the Seawolves is Madeline Gomez into her dismount, and she ended up banging a knee. You can see she's got a smile on her face because she knew she didn't quite pull out of that height, that last turn, as well as she would have liked. But this is the time of year, Mason, where, when we talk to coaches, they profess that, we're trying some different routines in meets. You may make some mistakes now because you're really in preparation for peaking at the right time, and also as a coach trying to figure out what your lineup is going to be. Who's going to be in that first, second, third spot?
Yeah, Gomez, she's mainly a vaulter and someone who participates in floor exercise. Actually set a career high in uneven bars last week at a 9.35. So when your 0.3 difference between that apparatus and your two main, it's not surprising. She's still trying to get used to being in that rotation on bars, and hopefully over the course of the season she grows in that, but you can see that's just not her best event.
Here's Sophia Dewar. She got some great height.
Yeah, she did.
And, very happy with her result as we turn our attention very quickly back over to the beam, and another drop for Southern Connecticut, as that, I believe, is Gabriella Deniso, as she had a bit of pace. And what you'll be trying to fine-tune, I think, moving forward is just getting those ankles together at the end and improving on the landing. As for Alaska Anchorage, up next on the bars will be Shreya Munshi.
Yeah, and my experience with gymnastics, all of the events except for beam, at the very least looked fun and were fun when you tested them out, but beam scared the bejesus out of me, and it still does. It's just something that those that are comfortable on that I find a little bit masochistic.
Well, you don't see me over there, that's for sure.
We are as far from it as possible, and I don't think that is a coincidence.
It is not. It is not. Here is Julia Bedell, reigning GEC Specialist of the Week. Her all-time best vault, a 9.85, picks up some speed into the vault, and that is a pretty darn good vault, and she knew it. Bedell, again, a layout full from her. Watch the speed as she approaches the vault. She starts, I'm a former track guy, and it's not unlike you see some jumpers do. They start out with a more deliberate pace and then attack into the vault.
Alaska Anchorage, be very curious to see what that score is. Remember 9.85 a week ago, and then the 9.9 that she had on floor. For the Specialist of the Week in the GEC that's a nice dismount. That little step back with the right foot, half step. But not too shabby is Alaska Anchorage, just trying to get through that apparatus, knowing that through that first, Brown probably going to have a lead just due to the fact that they're a strong vaulting team.
Yeah, the Bears did announce they would have an exhibition vault. That's what we're waiting on now. For Alaska Anchorage, individual season high was Emily Walker's 9.8 in the bars. She's setting up the mat now.
And bars is the Seawolves' worst event through their first two dual meets against UC Davis, the only apparatus where they didn't average 47 or above. In fact, it's the only apparatus that they didn't score a 48 at any point in their first two meets as a team.
I was looking at the wrong roster. That was Jada Niles, the last on the bars for the Seawolves. That was her first attempt this season, actually in...
Oh, that's a really nice exhibition. Wow. She stuck that.
So this is on the beam.
Can't wait to see that again. That is actually going to get her probably into the rotation next week. That a performance like not even a sliver of a step.
You're looking at Amelia Diaz of Southern Connecticut on the beam. Officials watching both the lines and the execution of the gymnastics.
Our beam judges over there, Patty Colarossi and Karen Tosti. With Colarossi, the head judge of those two judges per apparatus. Both of those national caliber judges as well.
Looking at Diaz, both ankles, the knee brace, and off the mat will cost her some points as well. It's been a tough go on the beam for Southern Connecticut, truthfully.
And here's that replay. Look at how nice this landing is. Full layout and stuck.
Yeah, brilliant.
As an exhibitionist, you know that you're doing that to perform in front of your teammates, but more importantly, your coaches. Get me in there.
So here's Emily Walker, the 9-8 in the bars the other day against Bridgeport.
Oh, nice hold up top.
That is her career high. And she had a little slip. You could see her I think it was her right foot on the bar. She was able to recover it. Did Walker.
And that's a really fun dismount, too.
There it was. You saw it. The senior out of Saskatoon, Saskatchewan.
And those are the ones where you truly see the strength of these athletes. They look so smooth, but when things don't go the way they want it to and they're able to hold it together and still make it look almost as if they meant to do it. Obviously, the judges know better, but those of us at home, you try to do that. One, you wouldn't be able to get up on the bar, to be perfectly frank, but you'd certainly face plant as you got off of it.
It's Alexa Melanson up next for Southern Connecticut. Her personal best, 9.75 on the beam. She achieved that at last year's GEC Championships, did the native of Moncton, New Brunswick. Has improved each year. As a first year, was about a 9.45 was her best on the beam. And then last year, 9.75, one of the top two scores among all Owls.
This is an Owls team that, because of the fact that they can have such a large roster, they have this huge freshman class that they're going to grow and develop, and led by a group of seniors. Saw Emily Call on beam just a few minutes ago. University of Bridgeport transfer, started there, and then with her head coach moving over to coach Southern Connecticut, she joined it.
One more on the bars as we look at Melanson for the beam and the Owls. One more will be Claudia Lessig.
And it's not a coincidence that you look at that senior class and all but one of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 seniors, 5 of them, actually all 6, I take that back. Every single senior started at Bridgeport and then transferred over with their head coach.
Claudia Lessig will be on the bars. Her season best, a 9.5, or career best, 9.55. Typically competes in 3 of the 4 events. Today that will be the case. There are no all-arounders for the Seawolves or the Owls today. You see Lessig at the bottom left part of your screen. Melanson wrapping up the beam.
That's the best dismount that the Owls have had. Slight hesitation, and speaking of a great dismount, that is class.
Yeah, and you could tell they're happy for Lessig when you look at some of the numbers she's put up career-wise, that is a fine performance for her to wrap up the bars for Anchorage.
9.55 was her career high, and with that stuck landing, she's going to be right around that mark. And then puts on the shades. Though this is the time of the year where you don't need shades too much in Alaska. Get maybe an hour of sunlight at this point of day, depending on where you are in our northwesternmost state.
Have you been?
I have not. My wife has. She's done an Alaskan cruise, but someplace that I've always wanted to go, although I don't think Alaska in January is the time I want to be there, to be perfectly frank.
You can be frank. You can be anybody you want. It's 2024. I have been to Alaska. I love Alaska.
I mean, it
is one of my favorite places.
I have been to northwestern Canada. I've been to northern Calgary and northern Edmonton, and even further north of there toward Banff and Jasper. So,
see, I have not yet done that. That is on my bucket list for sure.
Oh, stunning. Lake Louise up there, absolutely beautiful.
I had a very good friend who was from Eagle River, which is not too far from Anchorage. There's a pretty good crowd on hand as the Owls look to wrap up the beam with Angel Lee. Lee, the native of Chino Hills, California, as a junior, was the beam champion a year ago in the GEC.
And you can just see, look at how clean her lines are. These judges aren't just looking, of course, for the acrobatics, but they're looking for these clean lines. And she just looks so comfortable up there, which, you know, when someone doesn't look comfortable, that she almost makes it look effortless as she holds with that core strength.
All-American a year ago, second team.
First GEC champion in the history of the Owls. And this is her specialty event. Won't see her anywhere else, so take it in and enjoy while you can. And even with a couple of bobbles here or there, just oozes class and poise.
So Southern Connecticut finding some things to work on here in the beam as they will wrap things up down on the other end of the floor. We do have some of the results coming to us in the first rotation, and we'll do our best to keep you up to speed on it. But as we expected, the Bears, some strong numbers in the vault. And though the scores for the beam haven't been updated yet, based on what we saw at least, it would look like the Bears will have a lead after the first rotation.
Yeah, I would expect so. But a really good bars performance, I think, all around by Alaska Anchorage should keep at us in general.
Yeah, they will have an exhibitionist. I believe.
Julia Bedell, 9.75, thanks to that little half step that she had, getting deducted a 10th, I would expect. And at least as right now, yes, Brown 48.25. Those final standings on the vault, I shouldn't say final. All these scores will be actually confirmed and finalized before the event finishes. So these are not official stats, but at least what's being pushed across. And Emily Walker did get a 9.65 on that bars routine to cap things off for Alaska Anchorage. Interestingly, Southern Connecticut's best beam score was their first athlete. Libby Allen had a 9.75. Melanson in the 5 spot, 9.725.
This is Angelina Stamfa, first year out of New Jersey, as an exhibition for the Seawolves. For the Owls, I'm sorry.
And we're not going to be able to see those exhibitionist scores, but I'd be very curious to see that last vault score. Obviously not the most difficult vault that we saw from the Bears, but it was the cleanest executed.
Brown moves over from the vault to the bars. I believe the Seawolves from bars to vault, and that would leave the Owls on the floor for the second event. I would presume that would put the Bears over on the beam third and the Seawolves on the floor. And the Bears would finish on the floor.
And you see just .025 separating the third on her team, but it was enough to keep them ahead of Alaska Anchorage by the slimmest of margins. .025, can't get much closer than that through one rotation.
Yeah, the difference really the fall of Gomez on the dismount of her bars, and .025 behind Southern Connecticut, behind Claudia Lessig's top score on the bars. And in the beam, a really strong day at the office for a couple of the Owls, led in part by Libby Allen. And again, overall, a pretty good first rotation for the Bears. Allen, the 9.75. Alexa Melanson, we saw most of her routine, checking in at 9.725. As we head to this next rotation, that's the Brown Bears warming up on the bars. The lineup will be Liza Marcus, Sophia Dewar, Emily Ford, Maya Davis, Lauren McEwen, and Asta Farrell. McKenna Weiner will also compete. She got some varsity time a year ago for the Bears as the 7th.
And then heading over to beam are the Seawolves. You see their rotation there, including their exhibitionist, Celia Hildebrand, down there at the bottom. But Fairbairn will lead off, then Lessig, Barona, Bonifaci, Walker, and Jessica Johnson.
And on the always fun floor exercise.
Oh yeah, first time we get to hear the music today.
Yeah, the fans always seem to get into it. We've seen a lot of the, the more of the creativity comes out for the Owls. And actually what you often see are the athletes around the mat know the routine just as well as the routines on it.
And you see Libby Allen there as the anchor. So Bayer and Allen both with 9.725s last week. So starting off with a big routine and potentially finishing with one as well.
And a couple of names that are no strangers to Eastern Gymnastics. Hannah Zebdi last year had a 9.85, and I think she's in one of the earlier slots for the Owls on the floor as we get ready for this second rotation to get underway.
So Brown starting with Liza Marcus on even bars.
Yeah, she's got a fairly involved routine, a 9.85, her career high set last week. Keep an eye on the handstands. And a double tuck dismount will come from Marcus.
Yeah, you read through her routine, and it's a lot of complicated things, a lot of things that unless you're a gymnast, you won't know what it is. But that double tuck dismount is certainly one that's fun to watch. And here it's coming.
Now, she did it well. She actually really well done with her handstands as well. You got to hold yourself just enough to be able to pick up velocity as you're coming around that higher bar into the dismount. And a good run to start over on the floor for Erica Beyer.
Yeah, the reason those handstands are difficult is you have to hold it long enough for the judges to count it. But you can't be so long that you take yourself out of that momentum, or God forbid you go the other direction, which you will see happen. If you don't hold it perfectly, you start to go in the reverse direction, and then the entire routine essentially has to get redone.
And Seawolves on the beam. We initially saw them leave the bars and head over to the vault. I thought they were vaulting next. So the vault is actually open this rotation.
Montana Fairbairn to start off there. She did compete in the all-around so far this year. She's just not doing it today. But beam is one of her better events. 9.775, her career best on that apparatus, but she is a floor specialist as well.
Going to turn our attention back to the bars in a moment for sophomore Sophia Dewar.
And Doer also does that double tuck dismount. Not as many handstands as the routine, but that doesn't mean that things are any less complicated. But this is not her best event. 9.2 her career high, compared to a 9.8 on vault and 9.85 on floor. And
she missed it.
Yep.
And after you miss, the hardest thing for a lot of these gymnasts is not necessarily even the fall.
No, it's getting your
it's
head
getting
right
your head back up. Yeah,
absolutely. And of course, there is a modicum of embarrassment. You never want to fall or show weakness. These are some of the strongest athletes on the planet, and so any moment of weakness they just don't want to show. But sometimes it's even more impressive to see them get back up there and nail a second routine. We'll see if she can nail this double tuck dismount.
Under the eye of Tim Lewandowski.
Yes,
and you know, I was watching the coaches to bounce back. You know, that is a victory in and of itself.
Absolutely. Again, at that point, you're not competing really for your score. You know it's going to get thrown out basically toward the bottom. But look at the hang time on this dismount.
Look at the reaction of the assistant coach.
You cannot land a dismount any better than that. Not a flinch to it. Second up for Alaska on beam, Claudia Lessig.
It's Coach Bogosh giving her some final words of encouragement.
This is her best event.
Yes.
So certainly one to watch for the Seawolves.
Lessig, just a first year out of Spring, Texas.
That had to be a transition.
I'd imagine.
She starts this routine. Beautiful. Just that little wobble. Again, there may be no more critical group of individuals than gymnastics judges. You blink the wrong way and you're getting deductions in this sport. I'm sure that there are some figure skaters.
Cheerleaders, I think. I think they're. I won't cheer. Those cheer judges are ruthless. 4,195 miles separates Spring, Texas, just outside of Houston, and Anchorage.
You think she road tripped it?
I don't know if you can. I know you can't drive to Juneau. You have to take a plane or a seaplane or boat to get to Juneau. You might be able to drive all the way to Anchorage.
Dismount coming.
Pretty tight.
Yep. Meanwhile, Brown back on uneven bars and another slip and fall, but this time it was trying to come over the top of the bar and then back down, which is one of the hardest things to do because you lose your sense of where you are in the air.
Watch Lessig's dismount, some speed. Coach happy.
Emily Ford having to right herself and get back up. Obviously not nearly as big a fall, but did leave the bars entirely, and now we'll see her dismount. And it's a beaut.
Back to the floor. Woo-hoo. Very close. Yeah. You lose deductions for going over or touching the line.
Line is out in gymnastics. Obviously, there is levels of deduction based on how far you go out, and certainly leaving the floor entirely is a further deduction. But for Southern Connecticut, this is Kylie City. I think this is City. I'm not sure. Floor does take a little bit longer, so it could be Kelly in the second spot.
Yes, that is Kelly.
So second out on floor, Kelly from Long Beach Island, New Jersey, sophomore. see her on the vault in a little bit as well. She'll kick off the vault for the Owls as you see those scores on the second rotation. And back to the beam for Alaska Anchorage. That was a tough hold, was able to keep it together. Paula Ruano Barona.
Further away than
Yes.
Spring, Texas.
Indeed.
She, I'm quite certain, did not road trip it. I'd imagine that's a 12,000-mile trip.
From San Salvador.
Over on the bars.
This is a good routine so far. A good exchange between low to high bar, and now dismount to complete a great routine.
From Maya Davis.
And that reaction says it all.
Yeah, she's very excited. So are her teammates. Bears needed a better one after a couple of falls, so they'll take what they got there from Davis, the junior.
And Davis, she has the potential to be a really outstanding piece to a potential Ivy League Classic defense. Really peaked at the tail end of last year, where on that apparatus had a 9.75, a career high, 9.8 on beam as well in February of last year. And to go back 2 years, she had a 9.9 on the floor. So she puts it all together. She is going to be really dangerous. She's not a vaulter. That's the only thing keeping her from being an all-arounder.
This is Kylie City. Third floor exercise for the Owls. City, a native of Hazlet, New Jersey, a first year. Last week, a 9.025 in their meet against Oregon State, Rutgers, and Utica. It was actually 2 weeks ago.
Bears had Oregon State last week.
That's right.
And it's one tight-knit community. Everyone kind of knows everyone, particularly at that major level where you obviously have the schools out of the SEC and the Big 12, and then the former Pac-12.
The Pac-2?
Yeah, they're still in existence, in Oregon State obviously part of that, but there's tiers in the gymnastics world at the collegiate level, and it's at that second tier below the huge major programs. Oklahoma, #1 in the country again.
About to go up on the bars for the Brown Bears is Lauren McEwen. The Bears will close with a couple of seniors. And on the beam is Ariana De Souza. Good exchange by McEwen. Gets back up to the high bar. Being spotted. Some pace. The turn. The landing.
Really nice. The only thing that those judges, again, they are ruthless. They're going to see that little bit of leg separation as she dismounts the bar. You want to keep those glued together. Similarly gorgeous dismount, though, over on beam for De Souza for Alaska Anchorage. And after a couple of falls early, Brown has really righted the ship, as you're going to see this gorgeous dismount here. Again, watch the little bit of leg separation. Judges are going to notice this, but not much else that you can fault. Look at the lines, beautifully done.
And the Bears had a couple of sub 9.0s on the bars, and we'll have Asta Farrell in the final slot. Meanwhile, to take the floor in just a moment for Bridgeport will be Hannah Zebdi. She'll be followed by Libby Allen and Alexa Melanson as you get a look at De Souza's dismount on the beam. Emily Walker and Jessica Johnson to close the beam for the Seawolves.
But this is what Farrell, this is her event.
For sure.
She's going to start with that handstand off of a glide, kip, and cast, and just count the number of handstands in this routine. 1, 2, 3, 4 handstands, and then she finishes with a giant layout and a double tuck together in probably the most difficult dismount for any of the Brown Bears. Just count how many times she changes between low and high bar as well when she gets up there. She's going to chalk up a little bit more and gives us an opportunity to look at Southern Connecticut a little bit closer on the floor.
Hannah Zebdi, the tumble pass.
Almost had those legs come out from under her, a little bit of an under-rotated.
And we saw that happen to City with the last gymnast, and she did in fact slip, which again, as your first year gymnast, you're getting used to the pace of collegiate gymnastics. You do that pass, and sometimes you get a little too much velocity and lose a little control.
And there is so little margin for her. Obviously, there is a slight trampoline underneath the floor as well. It's a safety measure, but it also means if you over or under rotate, you're going to bounce.
A good second pass for Zebdi. As Farrell is waiting to take the bars. Here's Walker on the beam, the bottom right part of your screen. Zebdi seems happy with her floor routine.
But it's the next floor routine that's going to be the real fun one to watch as well. Libby Allen coming off of a really strong routine on beam. And Farrell just about set to get ready to go. Just getting herself into that right headspace.
And the officials taking quite a bit of time with Lauren McEwen's evaluation. And sometimes that means that if the officials are too far apart, they do have to confer and evaluate their scores, and now they put their hand up and say they're ready to go for Farrell.
Again, obviously this is not Olympic gymnastics. If you're one that's used to watching that with all the judges and scores being dropped, just 2 judges and you average them together. But here goes Farrell. Just look at how long she is. Everything that she does so graceful because of that length.
She exchanges again from the bottom to the top bar. And now she'll work into that dismount in a moment.
This is, ooh, she was sliding a little bit right to left as we view it, but was able to stick it.
May get up into that 9.7, 9.8 range following that performance.
And she's definitely going to be moving a little bit as she comes across. And you see that little bit of leg separation as she tries to center her body on the mat, but is able to cleanly stick the landing. And again, after those sub-9s to start, Brown going to still be right there through 2 rotations.
Well, here's Allen. Again, we mentioned
leading scorer through the beam, so she's got a really fun routine as well.
Here comes her first pass. Takes it fast. She gets deep into that corner.
Yes, she does.
She gives herself a lot of space. And I think it's because of the complexity. If she's another step forward, when she goes into that, if she stumbles forward, she's out.
Yep.
So it's definitely strategic as to her starting point for Allen.
You see those rotation scores. Again, they're going to be a little bit imbalanced because, as you see, the exhibitionists fall off for Brown. Southern Connecticut still has a number of scores on floor still to come. They're going to be the furthest back until everybody completes their rotation. Brown really blazed through the bars just like they did the vault. So with Alaska still 1 score to come, but you're going to add about another 9, 3 or 4 based on this routine, and Alaska should lead through 2 rotations, barring a fall.
That was Mackenzie Weiner for Brown, who fell there on the bars a moment ago. This is Jessica Johnson.
Yep. Johnson, who again, she has all 4 apparatus in her arsenal. She hasn't done it all around, but she can compete in all 4 events.
9.35 earlier today on the bars for Johnson. Good turn.
Her career high of 9.85 on this event, her best of any of the 4.
Well, and her knee brace, you can see the bottom strap has actually opened on her. And in some sports you wouldn't notice that, but she turns the wrong way, those straps are going to hit against the other leg. And
when you got 3 inches on that beam at best.
About that, yeah. That's
you have
what
to
it
be
is.
in the zone mentally on the beam more than any of the others. And it is something like that, Mike, as you said, that can take you out of it. But that's a gorgeous little dismount.
Side dismount for Johnson.
In many ways, those seem a little bit scarier because you're still so close to the beam. But gorgeous flips inside and a half twist as well to stick that landing.
And that brings us to Alexa Melanson. Again, with an extremely strong showing on the beam earlier with a 9.725, just off Libby Allen's 9.75. And a pretty strong floor overall for the Owls. Here's Melanson's first pass.
Her personal best on floor was a 9.85 she had against Bridgeport last March. Beam and floor are her 2 specialties. Asta Farrell finished with a 9.75, best of any athlete through 2 rotations on the uneven bars. Montana Fairbairn, a 9.85 on beam for Alaska. Best score of any athlete on any apparatus through 2, and I don't expect that to change.
Oh, she was the first competitor for Alaska.
Interesting that Southern Connecticut starts on beam and their best beam score was their first athlete, and Alaska Anchorage did the same thing.
Yeah, that's more rarefied than it is typical, more anomaly than typical. Melanson pleased with her result. Again, ignore that 75.475 there, folks. That's really not where we are from a live standpoint.
You're going to add 2 more floor scores to that to actually get them. And the way that gymnastics ends up working, even though the scores are actually high, you're talking about tenths of a point here, to the point where we've actually seen a tie at the highest level of collegiate gymnastics earlier this year. I think it was Alabama and LSU. I could be wrong on the schools, but tied after 4 rotations down to the 100th of a point. So that's how close the gymnastics can get.
This is Celia Hildenbrand for the Seawolves in an exhibition spot as the senior from Washington State. Bears will be on beam next. And I believe that would leave the Seawolves going to vault and the Owls to the bars just by process of elimination.
And it was Alabama and Arkansas, 197.525 to 197.525. So these are the types of scores at that highest level where you're talking thousandths of a point deciding entire meets.
And there's no automated time. I mean, I think that's the part of this. There's no way to, recalibrate, recalculate. It's done on subjective judging.
Yep. Which is why, again, you ask me, this is why I could never do this sport. Not the athletics, which I can't do either. But there's always been something in me that just said, I want to play a sport where I'm not relying on a judge to determine if I win or lose, because I'm the type of person that would get so upset and not blame myself. I'd blame somebody else But it is truly amazing what these.
Yeah. So are you in favor of automated officials in sports like baseball?
Oh no.
Okay.
Oh God,
all right.
no.
All right.
But at the end of the day, you hit the ball over the fence. I know what happens, and
Fair enough.
again, it's not like I can skate, so it's not as if I could ever be a figure skater. That would be something that people would probably pay to watch. In the worst possible way is Mason on skates, but.
Well, everybody has a little hankering for some Schadenfreude every now and then, and you on skates might give us that dose.
I can tell you, again, my wife Jenna has some videos of me ice skating, and I'm sure she brings them out every so often when she just needs a laugh.
Well, I think the folks at home are quite certain of a few things. One, they're watching some great gymnastics here this afternoon, and neither of us are going anywhere near any of these apparatus unless it's to walk past it.
I don't even think I could walk across the balance beam. Now, I have size 15 feet, so that definitely doesn't help. But you just tell me, get up on the beam and walk across it, and I might not be able to do that without falling.
Oh, I think the Brown Broadcaster Follies are about to. Stay tuned, folks. After this one, you might be in for a treat. I asked David Korzanowski last season if we were going to. College gymnastics, and we'll get a look at the results through 2, and you'll see that Southern Connecticut and Alaska Anchorage jumping ahead of the Brown Bears after the bars for Brown. Alaska had 5 gymnasts with a 9.7 or higher on the beam. That'll help.
It certainly will. Again, that's always a difficult apparatus to score high on. So to get those scores, it just means that it's going to be a little bit easier. Now you move to floor, which typically has higher scores, as long as you, of course, complete your routines cleanly. And this is why Alaska Anchorage, not a school that a lot of people associate with gymnastics, but they've obviously had gymnastics for many decades, and they've built a program that not a lot know about, and now they move over to the floor, and they should be able to perform well there. In terms of team standings through 2 apparatus, Alaska 96.525. Again, these are unofficial until meets end, but a slight lead over Brown by 0.7 of a point, 95.825 for the Bears after a good rebound after a difficult start on uneven bars, and they will be on beam. And then Southern Connecticut, 95.35 after a pretty decent floor rotation that was slightly below their 47.75 on beam, but 47.6 on floor, led by the 9.675 of Libby Allen and the 9.7 of Melanson. But they got held back, though, by City's Fall, which was the lone sub-9 score, 8.95.
You know, really, I think it makes you wonder a little bit, Mason, if how much of this is in the Brown Bears, maybe in their head a little bit now. If you're trying to win this home meet, you were undefeated last year at home. And yes, we talk a lot about, this is sort of like the beginning of the season. You're still sort of in that, exhibition mode. There's some pressure going into the beam.
There is, and you see Emily Ford's 9.825 leading the way last week, but the first time you'll get a chance to see Jessica Lynn on beam. She'll be the anchor of those 6, and you obviously want Lauren Kramer to get you off to a good start. That 8.9 that she had against Oregon State, that's one she'll want to put in the rear view mirror, as you saw that group of 6 plus your exhibitionist. And as we run it down on beam for this Brown Bears team, it's Kramer, McEwen, Marcus, Zing, Ford, and the aforementioned Lynn getting her debut. There's Alaska Anchorage, who will be on floor. Perkins, Lessig, Gomez, Hildestrand, who first time we're going to see her outside of an exhibition role today. DeSouza and Fairbairn. That 6 for the Seawolves, now taking that slender lead. Southern Connecticut will be the quickest to get through their apparatus. They're on vault, and it's Kelly, Rooker, City, Rancher, Zebdi, and Brianna Dorr. They're 6.
This is Lauren Kramer on the beam, bottom right part of your screen. On the floor, that's Gomez for Madeline Gomez, already going for the Seawolves. And up in the top right corner of your screen is Ava Kelly, the sophomore, as Mason just said.
Kramer starting things off. She'll finish it with a front full dismount. But watch that switch leap and straddle three-quarter turn that she's going to do right before she dismounts. Good pirouette there. No flinching, and you see those rotation scores starting this third as Alaska with their lead. You mentioned it's been 2+ decades since the Bears have knocked off the Seawolves, and they're going to have some work to do after a good start.
Kramer falling.
Second straight week she has fallen on her beam routine. And that's why not only are you trying to pick the 6 best gymnasts, but the life of a coach of trying to pick the order is so difficult too. Do you stronger gymnasts early to try and lay down a score? Do you try and anchor them late? Do you balance them in the middle? It's like playing Tetris and trying to get everything to line up perfectly. And if you don't, there's going to be gaps.
We'll watch Kramer's conclusion. And again, able to rally. She had, and you can see first words out of Coach Harris's mouth. It's all right.
Yep.
And again, if you're not taking risks in this sport and pushing yourself towards a foul, you're not getting very far. It's a good vault.
And again, this is a
Sophia
sport
Rucker,
where, yes, they are grading you out of 10, but there is difficulty assigned to each and every move. Every judge knows what's coming, and so there are maximum scores that you're working toward. The more difficult the routine, the higher the reward. That is exactly right, Mike. It is high risk, high reward. If you don't take the risk, you might get a better actual execution score, but in terms of your difficulty score, you're going to be lower.
correct. Here's Kylie City will be next on the vault for Southern Connecticut. On the floor is Claudia Lessick. Again, she's competed in all 3 of the events so far for the Seawolves. She will not vault, which is where the Seawolves will conclude their afternoon.
So this is the last time we'll see her today. It's been a good day for her so far. As Lessig, 9.675 on bars, 9.75 on beam. Oh, that's a big step. That's a full step out with that right leg. So that'll be a larger deduction than it would be if she just slightly crossed that line.
And again, what you do is you watch it on film and you maybe make an adjustment either in the execution of the pass itself or the start point. As up on the beam, for Brown will be Lauren McEwen.
And Alaska does have 2 weeks off from actual meets before they go to Centenary, so that means that they will have some time to work on these things and polish them up before another lengthy road trip, which is the norm for them.
Here comes City. She didn't get great height coming off of the vault, and as a result, when she tried to tuck it back in, her head was already pretty low.
And of course, that center of gravity, it's moving so deep, so you're just naturally inclined due to your inertia to be pulled back. And you saw not only did she take the step, but then it was so big she dragged the other. That's a gorgeous tumble, right to left down the bar.
Again, Southern Connecticut working their way pretty quickly through the vault, which tends to be the case.
It's a routine that's going to finish with a gainer dismount. Watch the angle of the legs when she dismounts. That's what's going to distinguish that as the gainer.
And Bears with another fall. Meanwhile, on the vault, some pace. And
almost hopped herself off of it.
Yeah, that's Lexi Brashear, the junior.
Hard part for the Bears, though, is that it's the second routine where they've gotten very deep into the routine and then had the fall. It wasn't early, so you're feeling confident, and you see that side dismount with the gainer to complete it. It's been a couple of rough starts in the last two rotations that Brown has then put a lot of pressure on their anchors to get them right back in it. But there's just such a slim margin for error, and with Alaska Anchorage continuing to execute, it's just widening that gap, 10th by 10th.
Maddie Murphy on the floor exercise. And I am going to be the first to commend her on her choice of background music.
Absolutely.
Here she goes for her second pass. And able to stay into a back tumble. A well-timed routine by Murphy. Sometimes you see them stop and the music plays, or vice versa, the music stops and they're still going.
You can't stop in the middle of Crazy Train.
No, definitely not. So for Brown, next up on the beam for Brown, I believe it's going to be Liza Marcus, sophomore.
Meanwhile, for Southern Connecticut, as they continue to roll through the vault, I think it's either Brancher or Zebdi.
This is Zebdi.
So already fifth through their six. That's nice.
Yeah, she knew it.
You just see the length. These taller athletes, and tall is a relative term in gymnastics, but she's clearly taller than some of her other teammates. But you see how long she can get with those strides, and then able to get that extra push off the table.
Great landing for Zebdi. And been a couple of good events in a row for the Owls, who, again, a strong performance of the beam to start for a couple of their athletes. They really did a fine job on the floor. Marcus on the beam. Keep an eye on a front tuck and a full turn, which are both elements that can sometimes lead to the beam being less forgiving. Let's put it that way.
Only one score reported so far for the beam, but it was Kramer with the 9-1 after that late fall. And we've seen already 2 falls for Brown, so they can't afford another one, or else Southern Connecticut, they may already overtake them depending on how this goes. It's going to be close.
Sylvia Hildebrand on the floor for the Seawolves, as vaulting is Brianna Dorr.
2 great vaults to conclude things for Southern Connecticut. Again, you can't go off of those live stats because Southern Connecticut's going to lay down their vault score first, and then everybody else is going to reel them in as they complete this third apparatus of 4.
And Marcus with a strong finish on that 1.5 dismount. Came a little bit off kilter towards the right, but again, never left the beam, which at this point I think is a victory.
That's what it has to be. You need these tight routines, but you just have to be as mistake-free as you can. You can't afford those full 10th deductions or more, which is what happens when you fall off the beam.
So a strong showing for Hildebrand on the floor. She will be followed by Ariana D'Souza, as you'll get a look at Door's final vault of the Owls lineup.
So for Alaska, they will still have Ariana D'Souza and Montana Fairbairn, and Fairbairn, who laid down the gauntlet on her last rotation.
Interesting to see if Door's 9.75 from last week stands up as a season best, or if she's able to top that number.
And the 9.85 from Fairbairn, who will anchor this floor exercise for Alaska Anchorage. That 9.85 she had on beam is still the highest individual score of any athlete on any apparatus today. No 9.9s yet.
Good run by Libby Allen of the Owls for one of her exhibition passes, as the Bears put Emily Ford, the first year, on the beam for the first time at home.
Ford, a good vault, 9.65, second to Bedell for the Brown Bears, but then had that fall on bars that dropped her to 8.95. So
well, she has a very complex routine that features a side aerial, and you'll get a look at it in a moment.
These are the compulsory exercises. Everyone's got to do these intricate middle pieces to the routine, and then you add the individual elements on top of it.
Oh, almost landed it perfectly. Her knee didn't touch.
My knee snapped as I watched it.
Is that what that sound was? You might want to get that checked.
That just shows the ridiculous lower body strength of these athletes, to almost be able to go down and somehow find a way to have that lower leg strength. Yes, it's going to be a deduction, but it is not considered a fall on the dismount because she's able to rescue it.
D'Souza, a little stumble, but again, bailed herself out of it.
That 9.85 from Fairbairn, we haven't actually seen a 9.8 either, so a full 10th better than anybody else on any other routine so far today.
D'Souza's career best 9.825 on the floor. I don't think it's going to be quite there tonight or this afternoon, as you'll watch once again that dismount we were talking about.
Ow.
So one more for this rotation, one on the floor for the Seawolves, Montana Fairbairn.
And this is going to be a big opportunity for Jessica Lynn. First collegiate routine for Lynn.
Yeah, she did not compete last weekend either.
And she has some brutally difficult things in this routine, most notably a cartwheel tuck 1.5 for her dismount, along with that side aerial that you mentioned. She makes that look easy. That is brutally difficult. Even just
There's
that
the turn.
half turn to get from facing one way to facing the other. She's going to get to this end, and here comes the cartwheel 1.5.
Cartwheel tuck 1.5 dismount.
Starts with a backhand spring.
Well, that was pretty clean for Jessica Lynn.
For your first ever routine at the collegiate level, I would say so.
High energy on the floor to wrap things up here is Fairbairn. A 9.8 is her season best on the floor. She did that last weekend against UC Davis.
Another nice music choice, I have to say.
They do have some creative license, do the gymnasts, with their choices. Again, we're looking at really 2 consecutive very strong events for the Owls. They looked really strong on the floor and had a very good showing on the vault. We'll come back to that thought in a second. As they are going to eclipse 48 on the vault as a team.
Yeah, vault typically, barring some pretty big mistakes, is usually the highest scoring of the apparatus. There's just less that you can deduct because there's less intricacy to the vault. Obviously, it's done in a matter of moments, so there's only so much that you can actually deduct for.
We'll keep an eye here on Lynn. Again, Angela Zing's 9.7, Brown's top score on the beam. Hasn't updated quite yet. The Bears do have an exhibition on the aforementioned balance beam.
That's going to be another high score for Fairbairn, too.
This is Lindsay Yang, first year.
Alaska Anchorage is going to extend their lead over both the Bears. They're probably not going to extend it over Southern Connecticut because of that high vault score, but they're going to be in first by a decent enough margin that they should feel fairly comfortable heading to their final rotation. It's going to be close, though.
So far, Yang having a good showing. Great crowd here on hand as well. Brown typically does draw pretty well for gymnastics, and they'll have a great crowd on hand next week when gymnastics and wrestling share the floor on Sunday afternoon.
You have to imagine with just 3 home meets this year, this week Rumble and Tumble with Yale coming in next week, and then a single dual meet against Bridgeport.
Yeah, for senior day.
These fans who, as you say, always come out in numbers, but are really going to have limited opportunities to see their team at home. Now, I'm sure a number of them will travel up to UNH. That's not a long drive. They'll be in Uncasville at Mohegan Sun for the All-American Challenge. Ivy Classic this year is in Philly, hosted by the Quakers of Penn, and Bridgeport Quad Meet as well. So it's not as if there are massive road trips, but if you're going to see them here in the pits, you only have three times to do it.
So some excitement for Yang and her first collegiate meet at home as well. And we are done with our third full rotation. Third full rotation, and 1 event left for each. The bars for the Owls, the vault for the Seawolves. The host Brown Bears will be on the floor. And I think Yang, as an exhibition, may have just popped off a 9.7 coming off of the beam.
That'll be the second great exhibition that we've seen after the first one we saw on vault, where again, that was the best landing of any of the athletes. But unofficial scores starting to come in, and Alaska with their vault to come, which, as I mentioned, is usually one of the higher scoring events. They are 8/10 up on Southern Connecticut.
I take it back. I see the scoreboard now from that beam. I see a 9.85 over there, and that's from an exhibition. That'll make some decisions difficult for Coach Harris.
Those are the decisions you want to have as a coach.
And the stumble, I believe that is Talia Blythe for the Bears.
Trying to check those beam scores. That was Lynn. It's a 9-9. That was Lynn who finished that off. Emily Ford was right before her. A 9-9 for Jessica Lynn. That was the justified raucous over there.
Yeah, so it was not the exhibition. Again,
no, this is the exhibition.
This is the exhibition of Yang. I apologize.
Emily Ford lands a 9.875, and Lynn lands our first 9-9 of the day.
So on the beam, the top 2 scores of the day belong to the Bears. You can see Coach Harris huddling her team up. And there's some excitement there. You know, Mason, we again, there's so much going on over the course of one of these events. And, you know, as a coach and as student athletes, I mean, there are only a couple of us that are charged with trying to keep track of everything that's going on around. As a coach, you try and get your team to focus on the here and now. And I think a lot of times you can't really worry too much about where the scores fall in an event like this.
No, but in terms of what that does in the history of gymnastics, Alicia Sacramone was third all-time on beam with a 9.875. Ford matched that. Taylor Schultz in 2022 was second in a time, a 9.9. Lynn just matched that. Only one ever better. Jane Finst back in 2001, a 9.925.
Yeah, one of my former classmates, believe it or not.
So that's how it works. That's why it's these 2 judges. They average out, but Lynn 9.9, Emily Ford 9.875, trying to keep Brown in it. Now it's going to be tough because you look at the individual scores between the teams. Again, these are unofficial, but there's .425 separating Alaska in first heading into, I'm not going to say the easiest event, but the easiest to score event in vault. Brown on floor now, .425 behind them in Southern Connecticut, 4/10 behind the Bears in second place. So it's going to be tough, but you see this rotation: Kramer, Ford, Zing, Marcus Duer, and Bedell. Your chances rely on those same scores. The 9.7s, the 9.8s, and in the case of Bedell, you land another 9.9, you have a chance.
And the bars for Southern Connecticut, Massillon, we highlighted her at the beginning of the broadcast, that 9.8 a week ago.
Just need to have a little bit more balance. You don't want to have those 9.1s, the 9.3s, and you see the 9.0, and then you also see a 9.6, a 9.775, and the 9.8 from Massillon. You want everything to be a little bit more clumped together, more in that 9.6 range, and then maybe you have that truly impressive performance by Massillon in back-to-back meets.
And apologies to Lynn and Ford, who we had backwards in our roster here. And of course, wouldn't you know, beam, as we said, is as far away from us as possible, so we couldn't confirm it with the officials. Not that I think we're allowed to talk to the judges.
I don't think so.
No, we couldn't have tapped on a shoulder and said, hey, make sure we have this correct. But for Alaska Anchorage, they will open up the vault. And they are off to a good start. Now watch the other vaulters go running down the runway.
You vault cleanly, Alaska Anchorage is going to win this tri-meet. It's pretty much as simple as that, with the 4/10 difference that they have on the rest of the field, but an outstanding start by Haley Perkins.
There's Lauren Kramer for the Brown Bears to lead off the floor exercise.
I meant to say Montana Fairbairn, I promise. And Fairbairn may be having the best meet of anyone here. She just continues to lay down outstanding performance after outstanding performance. We'll see what those scores are.
Well, Kramer had a 9.825 out at Oregon State, where the judging was obviously a little different than it is here at home, as City will be done with the bars for Southern Connecticut.
But Fairbairn, a 9.85 on beam, a 9.775 on floor, and she's going to be right up there again on vault. She is having a monster afternoon for the Seawolves.
She will head Kramer into her next pass. Here's Avery Tillmans to vault. Kramer's second pass, the back handspring, and lands off with the double tuck.
Alaska 2 for 2, just that slight step back, but again, they control their destiny.
Yeah, this has been a very good day at the office for Alaska Fairbanks.
That's that first one again. Just showing tremendous poise. You lead off on vault knowing that at this point you're not looking for perfection. You're just looking for solid runs down the ramp.
48.8 for Alaska on the beam. Was a half point better than Brown, and Brown needs to catch up on the floor. Now for Alaska Fairbanks, the number was 48 on the floor, and Brown 48.25 on the vault. So if you're a mathematician, the goal for the Bears would to have at best Alaska to, if Alaska can equal Brown's performance on the vault, then the Bears need to go with another 48.8 at least on the floor, which is hard to do.
It is. This is, along with vault, supposedly the best all-around apparatus for the Bears. But for Alaska Anchorage, Fairbairn ends up putting up a 9.7. So 3 routines, and she has 9.7 or better on all 3. That's a heck of a day.
This is Ariana D'Souza.
And again, if they average 9.6 on all of their vaults, that means that Brown has to average 9.7. That's how you make up 0.4 of a point. That is so tough to beat every single athlete by a 10th when you're on floor and the opposition's on vault. But opportunity for Brown here. Second up.
First pass, a front layout into a front full. Front layout, front full. And a good landing for Emily Ford.
Her second will be the round off into the back handspring, double top, and then it'll be a leap at the finish.
There's the switch. She'll go into the corner for her second pass. Will Ford.
She had a 9.85 on this routine last week. A 9.85 is what she'll need.
Southern Connecticut just wrapped up their bars with Audrey Arnold. As a good run there by Ford on that second pass. Really nice double tuck.
9.85 is going to be tough with that routine. It's good, but they need great to try and reel in the Seawolves.
The Seawolves will head to their next vaulter. And Hildebrandt came outside the line with one of her feet.
So that's going to be a full 10th for stepping outside that white line. Full foot leaves it. You're going to get that additional deduction as you see Ford's. That's her first pass. And here's the second. But again, Alaska Anchorage, they're going to have that huge lead, and then they have to watch all these floor routines.
Here's their coaching staff, I should say. Now for the Bears, next up on the floor is Angela Zing on the bars there for the Owls.
I think this is Sophia Rucker.
I believe that is correct. Shreya Munshi is in the number 4 spot. JC Jordan, Gigi Mastalone will round out the bars.
Some serious air on that distance.
Yeah, Rucker, a fine job. As there's a zing on the floor. Going to the vault for the Seawolves.
Nice pass for a zing. And that full layout into the tuck.
That's Brooklyn Kopsak and Maddie Murphy rounding things out for the Seawolves over on the vault.
Zing heading over to that corner. Oh! She might have stepped out. That was close. And if you're going to step out, you don't want it to be in these middle portions of the routine.
No, a lot of things that I'm sure the Bears will work to clean up as the vault concludes with Kopsak and Murphy for the Seawolves. That was Kopsak.
Again, you have to get nitpicky in this sport. There is so thin a margin for error that something like that costs you half a tenth or a quarter of a point, it's so difficult.
Here comes the second pass for Zing.
Very nice.
And she will wrap it up, Will Zing. Her first floor routine of the season.
You see, this is the initial pass. Very nice. Coach loves it.
Big speed.
Speaking of speed, this is a blazing routine right here on the bars for Southern Connecticut State. Just went right into it as Shreya Munshi dismounts. Little bounce at the end, but all in all.
Oh, Munshi is tall
She
too.
is.
So that's where you see a little bit of that bounce.
And again, it is all relative, but Shreya Munshi stands about, I'll say 5'5", maybe 5'6". And again, sometimes when you have these shorter athletes, it's all packed into these small containers, and it's almost like they're little juggernauts. But when you have height, that also gives you length and artistry.
So here comes Maddie Murphy's last vault.
Half twist, somersault. Anchorage has done enough. There's no doubt about it. They have done enough. I don't see, barring some perfect tents, a way in here, but they were just rock solid throughout. There was Fairbairn's the best individual performer today all around, even though she's not in the all around for Alaska Anchorage. But I think what stands out to me most about the Seawolves, other than Madeline Gomez's 8.95 on bars, that is their only sub-9 performance.
Yeah, it was a very consistent day at the office.
And their second lowest score on any apparatus was a 9.325. So you had one sub-9, and everything else was 9.325 or better. That's just solid all-around team performance.
Well, and Ford with a 9.65 on the floor, a little lower than where she was last weekend. For Brown, this is Liza Marcus. Zing just came in with a 9.525, so that step out did end up costing her.
Marcus, her first pass, round off double tup, and now we'll head into a round off 1.5 front layout for her second and final pass.
As over on the bars there to the left of your screen, that was JC Jordan of Southern. But, you know, I'm looking at the Alaska vault scores, and they have two over 9.7, but a lot of 9.2s and a 9.4. So the Bears are still within striking distance.
Again, you're going to be relying on your big hitters. Bedell, obviously the biggest as your anchor.
Oh.
But you stay clean here and give Dewar and Bedell a chance.
Well, Liza Marcus has been solid.
It's what you have to be in the 4 spot.
Yes.
You're bridging your initial athletes to your big anchors, and that's exactly what the Bears needed.
Well, it's going to come down to the last two as you see Marcus's second pass here. Or first pass. I think that was the first pass, actually. This is the second. Look at the look of fierce competitiveness on her face.
So come down to your final 2 athletes. Starts with Sophia Dewar.
And here comes Gigi Mastalone. We talked about her at the top of the broadcast. Had a fine day last weekend for the Owls. That's her right there, 9'8" a week ago on the bars.
And again, she is tall and long. Look at the lines that she executes here. They're beautiful. And as I say that height can come to your detriment when you get to that lower bar, because if you're not perfectly in rhythm, those feet touch, and as tall as she is, she has to dismount.
And you see Coach Knox. I think the conversation is about control, maybe asking her to take a little bit of an extra risk this week after last weekend's performance, but
gives us a chance to preview Dewar's floor routine that's coming up. Her first pass, round off 1.5 front, and then she'll finish off with a round off back handspring double tuck. That is the hard part of that one.
And she's on short time too. They have to help her up. Yeah, there's the spot.
9.85 last week for Dewar. If she lands a 9.85 or betters it to a 9.875 or a 9.9, and Bedell has a 9.9 again, this could get interesting. You have to do the math, but
47.9 was Alaska's score on the vault. So 192.425 is going to be Alaska's score unofficially at this point.
I'll do the calculations while you talk us through this routine, Mike, and I'll tell you what we need in these last 2 unofficially.
Dewar will come into her second pass, which has a round off back handspring double tuck. There's the back handspring, the double tuck, and she hit it.
Brown has a chance. This is going to be, they need to average 9.65 over their last 2 to catch, I think, if my unofficial math is right.
Well, so far, Dewar has been excellent. She's getting the crowd involved, she's got her teammates involved, and the 2 passes were splendid. Oh, that's going to get her up into that 9.7, 9.8 range, I think. And you have Julia Bedell, who had a 9.95 on the floor. She has a very complicated routine ahead of us, but watch pass. Oh, just perfect. Coach Harris out there on the mat doing a little bit of a shake of her own. There she is. I always question the coach's attire. It's always black. You can always tell the dry cleaning bill.
You do end up dropping that lowest score, so that's how you get to these 48s. You got 6 routines. You take your top 5, and this is going to be, we'll see how quickly they can post the score.
Well, they've got it, and it's going to be a 9-8. We got ourselves a game here.
This is not over.
No, you thought that the vault was going to be it, but the numbers so far pretty favorable for the Bears. Here's Julia Bedell.
DeSouza's 4.75 and 4.25 for Tillemans on Alaska kept Brown in it. If those were 9.6s, this is not a conversation. But because your 5th and 4th best scores were in the 9.4s, Alaska opened the door to the GEC Specialist of the Week. Wow.
She's got the smile on her face. She's feeling it, and you know what? This is what you turn to your leaders for. It's an individual sport for sure, but there's absolutely a team concept. And the Brown Bears have not lost a match as a team here in a while. Last year going a perfect 8-0. They're not home very much this year. They have 2 here. They have the next week, and then they have, again, Bridgeport for their senior day. And here comes Bedell's second pass.
Round off back handspring, double tuck. She lands this. I think Brown has it.
There's the round off. There's the back handspring, double tuck. A little stumble. And how much is that going to cost her?
This is going to be close. Again, you saw the live unofficial standings, and the reason that Brown was ahead is because that's one routine away, and you're going to have to drop out a low score. And I still think Bedell's score, Angela Zing's 9.525, that's going to drop. They're going to drop the 9.525, and Brown may pip this.
So we said they needed to outscore Alaska by a half point. Alaska's vault score right now stands at 47.9. If the Bears score 48.5 or better, they have this one.
And again, Southern Connecticut's vault score was 48.35. Brown, and we didn't even think they had that good a vault, 48.25. A full 3.5 tenths ahead of the vault score of Alaska. You just didn't see Alaska having that much of a struggle, but they had 3 scores sub 9.5. You drop the 9.25, but then the 9.4s are looming large right now for the Seawolves.
And that's with a really great finish for Maddie Murphy at 9.775.
We still have some exhibitionists, so that'll allow the judges to total things up here.
Well, the judges are on the floor.
They gave Bedell a 9.85 unofficially. 9.85, and Brown, which needed to win by a half point, they're going to win by a full.
Yep.
1 point on the final apparatus. That is a stunning turnaround. And at least unofficially, Brown's 192.9 is way ahead of that 192.425 based on what we thought coming into that final apparatus.
And Asta Farrell will be on the floor for an exhibition as the officials tally the final scores here today.
And you can see the Seawolves, they were so pleased when they finished those vault routines. They felt good. But then when the scores came out, they realized that the door was open, and Brown not only pushed through the doors, they blasted right through them with some great final routines.
Brown's final scores, they got started on the floor with a 9.725 from Lauren Kramer, and then the turn, I think, came with Liza Marcus. She went 9.775, then Duar, the 9.8. Of course, you wrapped up with the 9.85 from Bedell, and then here we are looking at the Brown Bears rallying, I think, is the correct verb. I think that's the way to put it, Mason.
And it's so impressive because they knew what the scores were. They knew what they needed to do, and that ramps up the pressure. You're in front of your home fans. You're coming up against a team in Alaska Anchorage that you haven't beaten in quite some time. But you knew you were coming into your best all-around apparatus as a team. This floor exercise, they have so much fun with it, and they knew if they executed and Alaska Anchorage faltered, that they might be able to get them past them. And at least the unofficial scores that we're seeing in front of us, they have.
Well, Asa Farrell showing some sheer joy at the end of that. I know she's battled back from some injuries, so getting her back out on the floor, and she performed at 3 events here tonight. That is a great feeling for that young woman, I'm sure, and her coach, to see her back on the mat. And I think with that, the Brown Bears, the Seawolves of Alaska Anchorage, and the Southern Connecticut Owls just have to wait on some final scores, and the awards will be presented next. We'll get a sense of what those final team scores could be as we step aside, wrapping things up here from the Pizzatola Sports Center. This is the Ivy League on ESPN.
Maya, how are you feeling about the first meet of the year?
Feeling pumped. We all look super good, and it's just good to be back with everybody, so I'm super excited.
To charge right through it en route to this victory.
4 of the top 5 floor exercise scores were for the Bears. That was the difference. A couple of falters on vault, a couple of lower scores, and that allowed Brown on their best apparatus to take control and end up getting it at the very end and continuing this remarkable undefeated run here at the Pizzatola Sports Center. Emily Ford getting announced, the lone all-arounder, 38-125, her finishing score.
Southern Connecticut with a 191.1. Alaska 192.425. Brown finishing with a 192.9. And again, these have to be verified. The score sheets all go to the officials. They sign off on them, and they wrap them up before they leave here. But I'd have to say that for the Brown Bears and for Coach Harris, they have to be pretty pleased considering this really their first Eastern competition. They lost. They scored 192.95 out west against Oregon State. But it's a solid victory for the Bears.
It is, and it's the fact that you had to come from behind to do it. You see those unofficial scores there when you go into your final event. Now, yes, it's your best event, but anything can happen on the floor. You know Alaska Anchorage goes first on vault. They're going to finish, and therefore you have to reel them in. And you did that with some outstanding scores. Obviously, the best score of the day is that 9-9 from Lynn on the beam. But ultimately, this was an all-around team performance. And when somebody stumbled, the rest of the team picked them up. And the players that we wanted to watch, the ones that we knew had the ability to lay down big scores, did that when it mattered.
Next weekend at 1 o'clock start against Yale for the Brown Bears as they will host the Rumble and Tumble here with the wrestling team. A 1 o'clock start next Sunday afternoon. Mason and I will be here for all the action as we say farewell now from the Pizzatola Sports Center, where the Brown Bears keep their perfect record at home over the last couple of seasons intact, defeating the Seawolves of Alaska Anchorage for the first time in a long time, and also taking down their eastern rivals from the south, the Southern Connecticut State Owls. For our entire hardworking ESPN team and my broadcast partner, Mason Stout, my name is Mike Rubin saying goodbye from the Pizzatola Sports Center. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Enjoy what's left of your weekend. Have a great night.